And welcome back to Conroy and Kroger. Lucas Koerner is a political commentator and reservist. He's with VenezuelaAnalysis.com. He joins us tonight to talk about the situation in Venezuela, which, as I said earlier on, Stephen, is on the forefront of everybody's tip of everybody's tongue.
Water cooler discussion.
Water cooler discussion. Lucas, welcome.
But it is actually important.
It is. Welcome to the show, Lucas.
Thanks for having me.
Just explain to everybody what President Trump and the American administration have done in relation to President Maduro and why it matters to the world.
Well, on Monday, the Trump administration imposed an oil embargo on Venezuela, effectively prohibiting sales to PDVSA, the state Venezuelan oil company, as well as purchases from that company in the United States. This is going to have devastating consequences for a country that depends about 90% of its export earnings coming from oil. Francisco Rodriguez, who is the foremost expert in Venezuela's economy, an economist at Trino Capital, also a former advisor to opposition presidential candidate Henry Falcon, has anticipated that as a result of these sanctions, Venezuela's GDP is going to contract by 15 percentage points in 2019. And take this in context that healthcare spending in America is around 7%. And, U.S. military spending 3.8%. So this is really going to have devastating consequences for the Venezuelan people, and many people are going to die, opposition supporters and government supporters alike. So this is really a serious international issue that people should be concerned about.
And this has been done because the American government are trying to get the elected president to stand down in favour of the opposition leader. The Americans and the international community are worried about not only the collapsing economy, hyperinflation, corruption, the disbarment of candidates in election, malnutrition, border smuggling with petrol going across the border to Colombia, etc., etc., etc. The international community, led by the Americans, basically take the view that the Venezuelan country is a basket case. As you know, they've been joined, as you said, they've been joined by other countries in recognising the opposition leader, which, of course, is incredibly unusual for the West to do this. Venezuela, of course, supported by Russia and China. Where is this going to land, do you think?
Well, it really remains to be seen. It's important to note that I think that the United States anticipated that as of last Wednesday, that when Juan Guaidó swore himself in as president, it was recognized by the Trump administration that there was going to be a fissure within the armed forces, and there might have been a popular uprising to oust the president. None of that has occurred. Life continues largely as normal in Caracas. Protests are largely minimal. Yesterday's demonstration was a very low turnout. So I think that these sanctions are a response to the Trump administration's failure up to now to oust the government. And, they're looking in the short term, and they're looking for a longer term effort to strangle Venezuela's economy in order to bring the government down.
Is the position of the military the decisive factor in resolving this, do you think? Or will international talks try and find a way to perhaps get a new election?
Well, I mean, that's the issue. There evidently is not, Venezuelans reject violence. They don't want to see some kind of civil war or violent uprisings. They want a negotiated solution. The military itself has pronounced itself in support of the elected Maduro government. And there's a lot of skepticism within the rank and file towards the opposition, which has historically demonized the military, and particularly Hugo Chavez, who himself came from the military, using racist monikers, etc. But at the same time, I think that the real hope right now is what Mexico and Uruguay are pushing, which is a dialogue summit, which is to take place in Montevideo on February 7th, trying to bring the international community there to resolve this through some kind of negotiated solution. That remains to be seen what that will look like. But we need to avoid the very real danger of a U.S. military intervention and civil war, as well as this kind of economic warfare from these sanctions that is going to lead to a total of 26% contraction in Venezuela's economy in 2019, which is absolutely catastrophic for the people here.
You'd have to admit that the economic performance of the current government has been a shocker. I mean, when you think that petrol in Venezuela, because this government and his predecessor, Chavez, subsidised petrol to the tune of more than $10 billion a year. Petrol is basically free in Venezuela, which is why there's all the smuggling over to the Colombian border. I mean, obviously that's an economic policy which is wreaking havoc on the Venezuelan economy.
Without a doubt. I mean, the Maduro government has made a series of policy failures, in my opinion, that being the failure to raise the price of petrol to a international standard to prevent smuggling, the failure to crack down on corruption, implementing currency reforms to avoid the kind of distortions you're seeing in the currency. However, we should recognize that the collapse of the oil sector, as Francisco Rodriguez has noted in a paper last year, has much to do with U.S. financial sanctions, the U.S. financial blockade imposed in August of 2017, which in the 12 subsequent months led to a decline of around 1 million barrels a day in production, or a loss of $6 billion in oil revenue. I mean, considering that last year imports totaled $7 billion, $2 billion in healthcare. In medicine. I mean, this is really damaging the Venezuelan economy, and the Trump administration is playing a role in it. I mean, this is not trying to help the people of Venezuela in any way.
Look, thank you so much for that, Lucas. I know people in Australia wouldn't naturally start off by saying what's going on in Venezuela, but there's some really important implications across the globe by what's going on here. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you again as this situation unfolds over the next weeks and months.
Great to be here.